Welcome to the Arkansas Baptist Women Podcast. On this season, we will talk about the beauty of belonging to a gospel-centered, like-minded community that shapes and encourages us to love God and to be present in our calling.
We are excited to sit down with different women from all stages of life and hear what God is doing in their life in an area of ministry that God has called them to. Join us as we find encouragement in the work and presence of God as He is reflected through casual conversation around coffee and authenticity.
Hey, we are back today with a friend to hear about her current season of ministry and how she is present and obedient in her calling. And so today we have got on with us Gina Green.
Yes, I have gotten to know Miss Gina Green for the last, since 2017, and so we got to work together while we were both at Cross Church for a season, and so we are so glad that she is here with us today. So welcome, Miss Gina.
Thank you. This is exciting.
And we're so excited that you're here. So first, just tell our listeners a little bit about you. Tell us about your life, your work history. I mean, you're retired now, but just kind of about your life, your family, all that good stuff. Let us know about you.
All right. Well, I'm married to my husband, Tom, and we will be celebrating 45 years here at the end of May.
That's so fun.
And so we live in Northwest Arkansas. This is actually my third time to live here. My father was a pastor, and so he pastored here in Fayetteville when I was in elementary school. And then we moved away, and I came back to go to college. And that's where Tom and I met and kind of started our life and family and all that together. And then his career took us all over the country. And so when he retired, we said, our kids are scattered everywhere. We can go live anywhere we want to. And so Northwest Arkansas was hands down our choice. So yeah, we've been back since 2017. And I thought I was retired and then jumped back into ministry, which I'd been doing church ministry for quite some time. That's a whole nother, my education was teaching. I did that before kids, and then the Lord just always guided me into church ministry. So that was pretty exciting. But we have 3 kids, grown and flown. And my oldest and his wife live in College Station, Texas. And my middle child, son, lives in Salt Lake City, Utah. So that's quite the haul out that way. Yeah. And then my baby girl, the only girl, and her husband live in northern Iowa. And most importantly, they have my grandson, Jack, who just turned 2. And so that's been a joy in life.
That's crazy that he's 2. Sweet. That's so fun.
I know.
As we're kind of getting to know you and our listeners are getting to know you a little bit, tell us about a mentor in your life that's had an impact on you.
Oh, I have been so blessed. I think initially, and part of my story is growing up in a pastor's home, I always knew about God, Jesus, my need for Him. And I came to that saving knowledge, at a pretty young age. But as I got older, I pushed against a lot of probably more rules and things I didn't understand. But some of that got wrapped up in my faith. And so probably the first person, or actually couple, that kind of intervened was a youth pastor that came to be on my dad's staff in Houston. And they just kind of took me in, and they answered my questions, and I loved music, and so they exposed me to this Jesus music that I didn't know anything about, and so that was great. And the funny thing was, they followed my dad from that pastorate to a pastorate in southern Arkansas, and so he was my youth/college pastor there. And then they came to Fayetteville. I said, "Are you following me?" to make sure. So, and his wife is still just a really important part of my life, and so I treasure that. But probably the next thing was when I came to college, I gravitated back to the church that my dad pastored when I was in elementary school, and it was a pretty small congregation. And so there was a group our women's ministry was everything from the 18-year-old college student to the 80-year-old, grandma. And that was just such a rich season. Those women taught me how to love my husband before I had one, how to love my children before I had any, because I watched and observed them, and just taught me how to love the Lord. We did Bible studies, and so that rich wisdom and knowledge was amazing. But they taught me practical things too. There's not a day that I don't cut into an avocado that I remember the lady that showed me how to first cut into an avocado. So those were just precious. And I look back, I've a long life and lots of places that we've moved to, and so God has just been so good to give me friends that kind of just helped sharpen my walk and my faith. And so I look back on all that. And even to this day, now that I'm an older woman, it's kind of hard to find those people that are older, but I have peers and I watch them. There's a gal who, since I've come, she was recently widowed when I first moved into the area. And so I watch her and see how is she walking through widowhood, and just watching some of my friends and interacting with them and see how they do life, how they do grandparenting. I'm a new grandma at this, and so I get to watch them and kind of learn from them. So just truly blessed with lots of people in my life.
Yeah, your friend group that you have is the best. Y'all are all just the greatest women I know.
Yeah.
I love that. That's so good to hear. So now, as you're a new grandparent, as you've entered into this season of retirement, what would you say God's teaching you in this season?
Oh, I tell you, all the things I thought of when I was working, like if I had more time, I would do this, whatever. And now I have a lot of time, and I find out I don't use it as wisely as I should because there's so much of it. So you think, I'll get to that, or I'll do that, or whatever. And there's so many opportunities, and I am a go girl. I want to be in the stuff. I want to, fear of missing out is a big thing. And so I would say yes to everything, but I've learned I need to really, use that time wisely and not fritter it away, not waste it away. And so I want to be real, I want to be real intentional with my time and not waste it. I didn't want retirement to be real self-absorbed. I retired for a couple of purposes. My parents were here and they were needing some more hands-on care. They were in a facility, but I just needed to be there. And my husband had been retired for several years, and so it was kind of time to spend some time with him and not give him the leftovers of my day. And I wanted to develop deeper friendships, and so I used that. Even today, my parents have both passed, so that's not high on there. But to be with my husband and spend time with him and to develop friends, and then to use my gifts. And what does that look like out of retirement? So really, the thing that God is teaching me is I had my list and my plans, and He kind of turned those upside down. I thought I was going to be taking care of my parents. Well, my dad died as I was retiring. Hannah remembers that time. And then 6 months later, my mom was gone. And during that time, I got a cancer diagnosis. And so that was not the retirement I chose, or how I wanted to do that. And those times just taught me to dig deeper into God and to trust Him and His timing and His faithfulness. And so that is still true. I've just had some opportunities, and I've just said, Lord, I'm going to say yes at what You bring my way, and not try to second guess it, and not, so anyway, he's been good with that, but I have to keep walking in that way just to know that time is precious and He's still got uses for me.
Yeah, that is so encouraging. What would you say are a couple of your daily or weekly rhythms with God?
Again, because of that abundance of time I think I have, sometimes it's easier to say, oh, I'll get to that later. I'll do that later. And I've never been a morning person. So you're not going to find me at 5 a.m. I admire those people very much, but that's not going to be me. I need my brain to wake up. I need my coffee. But I do know if I don't put that in early, it gets squeezed out. So that might be a walk with scripture going in my ear. I have a place that's probably one of the best rhythms, if you will. I have a place. Well, I just got new furniture, and so it was highly important to me that my chair be, very similar, because that's my space. And I know when I come in, if I haven't done that, I look there and I know this is, I need to come sit and meet with God. And so that's a rhythm, if you will, is having a place. I joked about technology and my being able to keep up with it, but there are some things I love to have scripture. I have a reading plan that comes to me and reminds me when I need to do it. And I'm in a group chat with, I do Bible recap, and I'm in a group with that. And so it's fun to see what someone else has gotten out of scripture that day. And so that's a little, keeping me on track too. But just some things like that. In my working, and even in a busy time, I still have on there, I have a pause app that reminds me a couple of times a day just to kind of sit down, and it's kind of a meditation. You can pick a minute or 5. It's based in scripture, and so that's good sometimes when life is crazy. Just, again, a little tap on the shoulder to say, hey, sit down, calm down, take a chill.
That's good.
Yeah.
Yes.
Are you reading any books right now or listening to any podcasts that you would say okay, yeah, this is the Lord's using this in my life right now?
Oh, I fell into podcast a few years ago, maybe when probably pandemic kind of time, and so I'm loving that. I love to read. Hannah and I would often swap out, what we're reading lately. So I have a dark side. I like true crime and mystery and that kind of thing. But that can't feed your soul all the time. So, and I've got into audiobooks. I never thought I was much of an audio kind of learner or whatever, but I do that, except for if it's nonfiction, I'm going to want to write in that book and mark it all up. So I need the book. Lots of things. I find myself now in retirement, not doing so much. I think before I did a lot of time management things and leadership things, but it's funny. Kristen mentioned this on your podcast. We're reading the same book. I didn't know, we didn't talk about it at lunch when we met the other day, and so I texted her and I said, all right, we've got to have a book club on A Fine Sight to See by Sophie Hudson. So that's a great book on leadership. So I don't do as much of that as I used to, but that's fun. I took a trip with a friend and I downloaded a Melissa Radke, who is kind of a Christian comedian, speaker. So she has a book out called Chicken Fried Women. And I love it because she's talking about women in her life and her family, but she says, they're crispy on the outside, but they're tender on the inside. And so it was just a laugh out loud kind of book we listened to on the way to a trip. And so I like to do things that just kind of make me laugh and feed my soul, and my stack of books to be read is kind of insane. So I can't just say, one or the other. I have a big list of books to be read, and I like to read about relationships, whether that's fiction or nonfiction. And so I've had a couple of good ones. Sophie Hudson book that I mentioned, and then she has a podcast with another gal, Melanie Schenkel, and she just released a really great book called Here Be Dragons. And it came out of writing when her daughter was going through some mean girl stuff. And she realized that the mean girl in her life was her mom. And so she talks about relationships and when, how do you walk through that, and even have to put up, some barriers for, some bad behavior. And it was not my experience, but so good to hear, because I know there's a lot of women who walk through that didn't have childhoods that were, fulfilling or encouraging. And so that's a recent book. I listened to it too, because it was Melanie's voice, and I'm so used to listening to her podcast that it was fun to hear her read it.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Gina, it's been, I guess, 2 times now that someone has said, other than Kristen, that A Fine Sight to See is a really good book. And one of my mentors, probably 6 months ago, dropped that book by my house with some other stuff. And, just in a season of, motherhood, busyness, I've not gotten a chance to read it, but it's making me want to pick up this book and read it.
Well, I just got started, so I'm not all the way through it, but I've heard her talk about it quite a bit, and I know what the concept is, and she's also just someone who will make you laugh out loud, whether you're listening to the book or reading it. She's got just some of those fun southern sound and words and phrases that make you laugh.
Yes. Well, I look forward to reading it. Okay, so tell our listeners, or let us peer into a little bit of the different roles that you've had over the past couple of years or decades of life and ministry, and how you've seen God use that for kingdom impact.
Yeah. As we said before, I grew up in a pastor's home, and I so appreciated that my parents never put on me the burden of, you have to act a certain way because you're the preacher's kid. I'm a firstborn, and so I put a lot of pressure on myself naturally. But what that did, it gave me, I felt, very confident, very encouraged in my family. But also it gave me just such a deep love for the local church. And I saw the good, bad, and the ugly, because, at dinner time, you're talking about, what's not going great in the church building. And, but it just gave me a deep love for the church. And so that's always followed me through. Like I said, when I came to college, I gravitated back to that church that my dad had pastored. And they had a really great college ministry, and so I found an opportunity to serve in that, and that's probably where I first had someone say that I had some leadership skills. And so, to be able to use that in the college ministry in that church, and again, also women that were, pouring into me and just showing me how to do life, because that was. I came back, at 18, I said, I believe what I believe because I believe it, not because this is what was taught to me. And so I really purposed to live and walk, after Jesus. And, that just transformed my whole life from there. So those early leadership and people just pouring into me, I taught school before I had kids, and then we purposed that we would live on one income so that when kids came along, I would have the option to stay home. I didn't know if I wanted to stay home because I had always worked, and I didn't know what that first baby was going to be like. But I stayed home, and then my husband's career started moving us around the country, and so I was so glad to have those years and time at home with my kids, but it also gave me freedom. Our first move was out to South Georgia, away from family, and I again found a church community and some other people, other young moms, and we just kind of banded together and did Bible study, and one of them would watch the kids at their house while the rest of us Bible studied, and then we would take turns doing that. And so developing then some teaching, leading skills, and also just love for one of the gals there. When you talk about mentors, I never thought of her as a mentor as much as a friend, but she was a little older than me in parenting, And she would be the one to say, your anniversary's coming up. I'm going to take the kids. Y'all go do something, because we didn't have family there. And so I saw how other people really poured into, and you love in word and deed. You do it. You don't just say it. And so those were really growing years for. And I've always been attracted to and involved in women's ministry, just because I love women, and I think we're just all like great people, and I'm interested in all shapes, sizes, ages. It's just I love connecting that way. So those gave me an opportunity, and it wasn't then until we moved to Georgia. Because I'd been a teacher, the plan was I was also the college fund. And so when the youngest child went to school, I was going to go back into the workforce and, save up money for college. And the Lord had different plans. And the first move where the kids were in school, I thought I would be teaching. And that didn't happen. And actually, I was serving in the church where we were, and we were involved in Awanas at that church. And so one of the other gals and I had the 5th and 6th grade girls, and we were just like, this is a great program in a lot of ways, but we don't think it's really reaching these girls where they're at. And so she and I sat down and wrote curriculum to do with those girls in addition to their scripture memory stuff. And so that was an opportunity for me to flex some of those muscles about writing and putting a lesson together. And so those were great opportunities. And then I became the children's ministry director at that church. And so,
awesome.
God was just faithful to give me opportunities along the way when, I had the time and availability, and I walked into that children's ministry job like scared, and they had not had one before. And so they're like, we'll figure this out together. And so, they were gracious to me as I learned, because, leadership skills, you sometimes you learn from your mistakes as much as you do from good things. So that just kind of started my church ministry. And every time I tried to go back into teaching, and I have teaching certificates in 4 states, and I'm not taught in any of them now, but because the Lord just kept saying, this is a place for you. And the same when we retired and moved to Northwest Arkansas, job there at Cross Church opened up. And by then I had kind of seen that my administrative skills were of great use. And I saw that as a ministry. I never saw myself, just as the church secretary, but what I did enabled the other staff to do what they were called to do. And so I appreciated all those opportunities. And so those are all the roles, I guess, I've had. And then mom all along the way. I thought, starting out having babies that, they're 18 and they're out of the house and you're done. One of our teaching pastors just talked about, actually, you're probably not really done till they're about 30. So I can say I'm really done, but our role shifts, and I love nothing more than hearing my kids. They all did the right thing. Mother's Day was just last Sunday, and they all called, so they all get a star by their name. But I love it when they call just to say what's going on or checking in on me.
Yeah.
I recently did a teaching with our women, and my daughter called several times. How's it going? How's your studying going? How's your writing going? And so that's just so sweet now to be in that role of life. And even though I don't get to see my grandson all the time, just learning how to encourage his parents and to love on him when I do get to see him. And so, yeah, I'm just blessed with where God has put me all along the way.
You've lived a lot of lives. I feel like you've gotten to have just like so many different opportunities, which honestly kind of leads into this next question. Like, how did you see the Lord meet you in this season of transition from when you did have a house full of kids to then becoming an empty nester to your kids being spread all across the country? Like, how, because I mean, that's probably at the beginning of that probably was not easy. So how do you feel like the Lord met you in that season of when that was starting? Because there could be listeners right now that they are about to enter the empty nest season, or
Yes.
their kids going off to college for the first time. So
Yes.
how did you navigate that?
Because my kids were 3.5 years apart, they kind of trickled out. So I guess a little bit at a time, that you get used to that. But when the last one was to leave, and she's the baby, she's the girl, that's when I kind of started becoming like, what am I going to do with myself? And I was working at that time, but I also, again, back to that group of friends who just encouraged me, and some of them had kids leave home. So again, I saw that, and so the Lord was faithful just to give me witness to how other people survived that. Some of it, I think, also is early on, we knew our kids could not be the main thing in our life. That there would be a time that they would go, and so we wanted to make sure our marriage was strong. We wanted to make sure that how we ministered in our church and community was strong, so that when they left, and we wanted to launch them well. Some of them took a little time to launch well, but we wanted to launch them well. But we also knew that there would be life after they left, and so that probably wasn't as difficult as the transition for me to retire. I loved working. I loved, where we were, but was obedient in that. And probably for me, it was, and this may also, be true for the one who's leaving an empty nest. I had to deal with, who am I apart from this job, whether it was mothering or whether it was working. And so I was a little fearful about that, that's how I was known, or that's what I was used to, and what would that look like later. And again, God was just very faithful to say, I'm not done with you yet, especially during a cancer diagnosis. And I thought, is this it? Am I going to get to see grandchildren? And at that point, there weren't any. And so the next year, God gave me a daughter-in-law. He gave me a grandson. It's just, so he just really redeemed those. But I had to trust him and trust what he had. And he was clear to say, I'm not done with you yet. And so I just wanted to be available and obedient to him.
That's good.
That is so good. So over decades of ministry and just your life, God has used so many different experiences and just his word, obviously, to just shape who you are from your ministry, and also just your giftings. And I hear that you sought out to be a teacher, but then you found yourself as a children's minister, now serving in other capacities in the church, to writing material, pioneering things that you never, I think, thought you would be pioneering, but also the way that you have seemed to be so present in just these relationships God has planted you in and around. And so what would you say to the woman or to the listener that may have now in a season of life that she's got time, schedules flexible? How would you encourage her to utilize the time and flexibility, but she is unsure where to start?
Well, and I think some of that goes to, like I said, I had people building and building into me and helping develop. But I think one pivotal moment in my life was when growing up the church of origin, I didn't really hear about spiritual gifts. And so, I knew things I was good at, but I didn't really, understand that on a spiritual level. And so that was really transformational for me to walk through a study where, I learned what those giftings were. And so I would say to that person, first of all, if you're not in a church that teaches that, or you don't have a group of friends that can help you see what that is, that's so helpful, because that directs you and that helps you say no to the things that, just aren't. I'm also, because I'm firstborn, I think I need to be involved in everything. And so that helped me filter out, that's really not something for me, probably someone with the gift of mercy needs to be in that position. And so it helps me also just say, be able to say no to things because God may have somebody else for that place. So that's what I would say. First of all, is examine, where your gifting is, and the other pivotal, transformational, I think, study in my life was Experiencing God. I hear they've come out with like an updated version, so I'm really interested to see that and see what it looks like. But this was back in the dark ages when I did it, the first edition. And
I think the covers changed. I think it's like they went with like a teal. Is it, or what? Am I wrong?
Thomas and I did it right when we were like moving, but the cover's pretty. It's very cute and trendy.
Yes. It was kind of scary before. It was like dark.
I think it was like
maroon or Moses or somebody on the front. I don't know.
Yeah.
It was kind of intimidating, but it was transformational in that. And one of the concepts, and it's just followed me through life, is God is at work, and He's invited me to join Him in. And being a list maker and kind of a planner, I just need to sit back and trust God. And that's where I am right now too, is the things I thought was going to happen in retirement have not. And so just to sit back and watch and ask God, where is it you want me? And then to combine that with what your passions are and your giftings are. And God is faithful. He will show you what He has. And I love it that He doesn't cookie cutter people. And so it doesn't have to look like, what your friend does. And He's just been so good for that. For this season, most recently, the first thing I said yes to was kind of a scary. We had not done live teaching. We had done predominantly, for our women's ministry, we had done predominantly video-led things. And so I was asked to do a live teaching, kind of a wrap up. And so I was like, okay, I'm okay with that. But in saying yes to that opened other doors. And honestly, and I was telling a friend this yesterday, I'm just amazed at what God is bringing my way, even to be able to be with you today, and just things that I never even thought possible. But I think that's just from saying yes. And I said it kind of scared, because the other thing that followed up with that was, can you take this 8-week study of Ecclesiastes and adapt it down to 4 weeks and teach it live to our women? And I'm like, well, Ecclesiastes, really? And so, you say yes, and you may say yes scared, but I'm scared on my side of things. I'm not scared on the side of things where I know I can trust God and He's going to be good, And so that's what I would say to the woman who is looking, whether she has time or she just wants to serve, find out how God made you, how He gifted you, and where He's working, that you can join Him.
That's so good. That is so good. Hannah, you have such great friends.
I love Miss Gina so
much. Well, it has been a joy to sit down and talk with you today, and you just to see how God has moved and worked in your life over the years, but also that you're so present right now in your obedience and your trust with Him. I feel like is so encouraging to our women as they get to hear and hopefully are encouraged today, for sure. Okay, as we close out, tell us just a few ways that we can be praying for you.
Well, thank you. Yes, I again, my list maker self, I started looking at the possibilities of things that are coming up in the fall. Our church is moving toward developing deeper leaders in our volunteer base, and so I know there's some of those opportunities coming up. And the old school teacher in me, it's like summer is like kick back because August is coming. And so I have this list, and I'm really, I'm doing what I just said. I'm praying and asking Lord to direct my paths in that. And so that He would just be clear. I still have a desire to develop relationships with friends, to go deeper in friendships, and that's not a one-way thing. And so I have to trust that what may seem like I've tried mentoring some younger college girls. Hannah knows my struggle here, and I think they're just so busy and it just hasn't worked out. And so it's been kind of a crush to my spirit, like, Lord, am I not really a good mentor? But I have to release that as well and say, so where is it? I was very involved in college ministry when Hannah was on staff, and that door kind of closed, and I grieve that for a little bit, but I also know, that there are many other things that God has us to do. And so you can just pray that I would listen to his voice and be obedient and open, and just keep walking with him, because life with him is just so much better than anything else.
You're so right. Well, it has been such an encouragement to me, I know, to Hannah, to our listeners today, to have you. And as you just continue to press and lean in, we are doing that with you wherever we find ourselves present in ministry and just season of life. So thank you. And we will be praying for you.
Thank you.